Hey, what's going on? This is Ian from Vetrepreneur Network. I'm here with Jake Hare, founder and CEO of Launchpeer. Jake, what's going on?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We're going to talk a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur, what you did in the military, and what's the plans going forward for Launchpeer. So,
Cool.
uh, what'd you do in the military?
So in the military, I was a 35 Fox, so I was an intelligence analyst. I did that for about 4 years. I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, with the 101st.
Nice. So, what kind of prompted you to go, into the military? I know you had kind of a unique background.
Yeah, so the military wasn't anything I was really expecting to do when I was growing up. I don't have any family members that are military, no relatives or anybody to tell me like, hey, you should join the Army or anything. I really joined the military because graduated college. I was working full time while I was going to college and going to school full time. So it was kind of a drain. I was waking up at 6 in the morning, going to work, coming back from work at 3, going to school from 6 at night to 10 at night. And it was just hard 3.5 years of college. But once it was done, I was like, okay, well, what other really hard thing can I go and do now? So now I really wanted to go to law school, but law school is expensive. And I thought, okay, well, I could serve my country for 3 or 4 years, get out, and then use the GI Bill to pay for law school. So that's kind of what I did. I enlisted as a 35 Fox back in 2010, and went to Fort Huachuca, went to Fort Campbell, and then served there with the 101st. And I don't regret it for a second because obviously we'll get into it. I didn't become a lawyer, so the Army taught me a lot of things about a lot of skills that I went to picked up before that are definitely helping me today.
Yeah, it's such an interesting kind of path to joining the military and then looking at that kind of piece. What was the thing that kind of prompted you to say, I've done my time and now I want to get out? And were you thinking like, I know what I want to do, or I know what type of job I want to do, or were you thinking like entrepreneurship the whole time?
I really had no idea what I wanted to do. When you're getting out of the Army and any service, there's a thing called American Corporate Partners. It's a program for veterans. A year before they get out, they can apply to get a mentor in the business world, and anything that you really feel interested in. So I applied. I didn't know if anything was going to come of it. And I got a mentor who was a business analyst, which is an IT type position. It doesn't sound like it, but that's what it is, over in Nashville, which is really close to where I was stationed at. I decided, hey, I'm going to hear him out, learn a little bit about the careers that he's done, fields he's worked in. But my goal was still to go to law school after I left the Army. But he definitely helped talk me out of it. The thing that really got me was, hey, you can make just as much money working in IT after you get out of the military than you could if you went to 3 years of law school, went out, tried to get a job. The legal career field isn't like it was before. So that's what I did. The mentor really drove me to a position that I secured right after the military, which was as a business analyst, junior business analyst, at a company out of Boston called Morpho Trust.
So were you like a tech inclined person growing up? How did you, I know you said you wanted to get into tech. Did you have any formal training or background in that at all?
None at all. I mean, my bachelor's degree, I got a bachelor's degree before I joined the Army, before I enlisted, so I didn't become an officer. I got a bachelor's degree in political science. It was the farthest thing really, except for maybe art, that you can go from tech. And so I wasn't really tech inclined, but when you're an intel analyst in the Army, there's a lot of tech kind of things that you're doing. I was in charge of a SATCOM squad, so we did a lot of satellite communication stuff, networking, things like that. And that, along with, I always had an inkling for entrepreneurship, and the easiest path to entrepreneurship for a lot of veterans is learning at least a little bit about tech. And so I did a little bit of that when I was in the Army, and then when I was getting out, it was just a really natural transition to go work for a tech company, doing some of the things I was already doing when I was in the Army.
So what point did you start to kind of get the idea to think about like, hey, I want to own my own business or have an idea for Launchpeer?
I mean, all growing up, I've always had a big problem with authority. I've never been very good at having a boss or somebody that's really overbearing over me. And that might be surprising to a lot of people that are in the military, because that's like the number one thing that you have to do is adhere to like that chain of command, right? And
I know that.
Yeah, and I was never I was good at it. I always listened to my chain of command, never got in trouble, got promoted really fast. But I think part of that was just an initiative to say like, hey, there's always a better way to do something. And so that's the attitude I always had. So when I got out of the Army, a lot of that attitude was still there. So I got my first job out of the service as a business analyst. There was always like an idea in my head that, hey, we can do this better, we can do that better. But when you're a junior at any position, saying things like that isn't really good. I mean, you're not supposed to, right? You're not a business owner, you just work there. And then after I left that company and got a job at a company called Spark down in Charleston, South Carolina, doing the same thing, it was the same way. I mean, I always felt like, processes are inefficient, like the way we're doing things are, stupid. Like I always had this ambitiousness about me, and being ambitious is good to a point, but at some point you have to decide like, hey, is the career path I'm on going to get me where I want to go as fast as I could do it if I was doing something on my own? So at that point, working at that company for about a year, I made the decision like, hey, I gotta go start my own business now, or I'm never going to do it.
Dude, so were you doing like entrepreneur classes at night? Or are you looking at like online resources, reading books? Like how did you start learning about it?
So I was really going to a lot of meetup groups and stuff. Charleston's entrepreneur community is pretty built out. I mean, they're not the biggest city, not nearly as big as Nashville, but they have a very big startup scene in Charleston. And so when you're talking about entrepreneurship, like you can learn so much from just going to meetup groups, talking to different people in the community, friends who are in that arena. The startup scene is huge in Charleston, and working in a tech field already, you were pretty valuable to those groups. So you can go to these groups and talk to these people who you could provide immediate value to when they ask you for, resources. Hey, do you know anybody who's a developer, stuff like that? And that's actually what started my path to starting Launchpeer. Was I had a lot of people in the community coming up to me saying like, hey, I have this startup idea. I need a developer to help me. I just don't know where to find any. You work at a big agency. We were like 370 people. Do you think you can help me find a developer who can help me build this? Every single event I would go to for months on end, I'd have somebody asking me that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because all the conferences that I go to, it's the same sort of thing. And there's a lot of folks who, need apps built or need, web developers on the go or in a pinch or things like that. So what kind of made you say, I want to start this as, a differentiator in the market and say, this is a little bit different from your traditional agency?
Yeah. So I'll start with like what Launchpeer is. So Launchpeer is a company that does web and app development just for startups. Everybody thought we were crazy when we first started because it's like startups, like they don't have any money, they can't. How are you going to support like a company on that? But, working with startups over the last year and a half, we've seen like there's a definite pattern to what startups need and what we can provide. I saw that the big problem was if a startup wanted development, they'd have like 2 or 3 places to go. They could go to a traditional agency like the one I was working at, which is big, which means a lot of overhead, which means a lot of cost. I mean, if you didn't have like $100,000 or more walking in the door, like chances are we weren't going to build anything for you. Then the second option was a freelancer, which they're hard to find. If you've never managed a freelancer before, it can be very complicated. Project management's a whole another skill in itself. And then the other option was trying to find that like unicorn tech co-founder, which really means you're looking for somebody to work for free for a while. And those are almost impossible to find. And so it's not that startups didn't have any money. It's just they didn't have $100,000. I know a lot of bootstrappers who say like, hey, I have 10 or 20 grand that I could, to spend on version 1 of my product. I just need a place to go build it. And so really early on, starting Launchpeer, after I quit my job, we decided like that's the market we're going to focus on. And every service and offering and pricing model and everything that we do is going to be structured around that person who has a little bit of funds and just needs to build the version 1 of their product.
Yeah, it's super interesting because a lot of the, and I'm going to HustleCon coming up, which is a conference for non-technical founders. And it is, you talk to a lot of folks, specifically veteran entrepreneurs that are looking for a technical founder, and it's really difficult. I mean, you founded this yourself and you don't have a co-founder. Was there kind of a reason behind that, or you just wanted, kind of the same problem that you're trying to solve for other folks?
I mean, it's hard to find a co-founder. I almost had a co-founder when I started Launchpeer, but entrepreneurship isn't for everybody, especially when you're jumping in. And at some point when you're building your startup, you have to jump in, right? Like whether it's you're working full time and bootstrapping the thing while you're working full time, and 3 months in, you're like, hey, I got my first few customers. I'm going to go jump and do this full time now. At some point, you have to take that risk. Not a lot of people are willing to take that risk. Those kind of people are very hard to find. And so when I decided, hey, I'm going to jump in head first with Launchpeer, even if I wanted to have a co-founder with me who maybe I worked with or something, the chances that they were going to jump in head first with me is very slim to none. And a lot of founders and entrepreneurs I know have that problem, which is why it's so hard for them to find a technical co-founder, because you don't want somebody who's going to work 40 hours a week somewhere else and then maybe put in an hour or two of work for you at the end of the day. Like, you want a group of people who are dedicated to building just your project. Another reason. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, and you want your co-founder to be strategic thinking. And if the best thing that they do is build apps, you can outsource that to Launchpeer. So, it's like, I totally understand what you mean. And a bunch of the folks that I've talked to chose their co-founders, not because they're, just a tech inclined person. It's for a million other reasons. And I think that that's something that's lost on a lot of entrepreneurs, and specifically in the veteran community, where, if you're coming out of the military, you're probably not, a coder or web developer or something like that. And if you're creating an app or some sort of technology where you need that skill set, have you worked with any veteran entrepreneurs or companies?
I've tried to. The thing is, there's not a lot of veteran entrepreneurs that are in this early stage, and that's one thing me and you talked about before. It's we see all these really successful veterans who have high up positions at these different companies. Actually the CEO of the company I left to start Launchpeer, he was a veteran. I had no idea for the longest time that he was a veteran of and finding veterans to help is a very difficult thing to do. I mean, the real narrative that we see is like veterans need help finding jobs. The narrative is not, hey, let's help veterans start companies. And I try to find as many veterans as I can. In Nashville, they just opened up Bunker Labs, which should help a little bit, and then other resources that we've tried to go to, like Patriot Boot Camp, things like that. So yep. I try to reach out to veterans as much as possible and say, like, hey, we'll work with you. And we also have special pricing for veterans too. So it's just one of those things where the community is so spread apart. It's hard to have a place where everybody kind of comes together and can find each other.
Yeah. When did you hire your first person? How long into it?
Yeah, I'm not a developer, so I had to hire my first person almost right away. So we got that first. I quit my last company, got our first client about 2 weeks later, and then had to hire a developer to do the work right away. So I think that's a good thing, though. I know a lot of agencies my friends start who they're started by developers, and so once they get their first contract, they have 40 hours a week that they're coding. They don't have any time to focus on, actually selling the business, doing any marketing or anything like that. If I had spent most of my time coding, we'd be on that curve that a lot of businesses are on, where, hey, I'm going to focus on sales. And then when you get a lot of sales, well, I'm going to focus on the work. And then you focus on the work and you're not focusing on sales. And then it just goes up and down, up and down, up and down for years. I know businesses that have been doing that for years, and that's not good. Launchpeer, I've been able to focus on just the sales and marketing, while I have really good developers who are able to focus on just writing the code.
I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs that have had a similar story where they put customer service at the very top of what they do. And I think that that's why it's just ingrained to you in the military that, you're taking care of people, you're taking care of your soldiers or your battle buddies or whatever. Talk to me about a little bit about your customer service at Launchpeer and how that kind of sets you apart.
Yeah, I mean, our customer service really starts before we even have a project start. So, like, if you go to our website right now, you'll be able to get a quote on a product on a new project in a few seconds. You just got to answer a few questions. We use Intercom, so you just chat with me for a few seconds. We'll give you a price quote. That's a lot different than other agencies where, you try to call them, they say like, yeah, we'll schedule a meeting, and then you have an hour-long meeting, and then 3 weeks later, like maybe you'll get a few questions from the development team. It's like, for a startup or entrepreneur, 3 weeks is like live or die. I mean, I know startups that die in 3 weeks if they don't have something out there. And so our customer service really starts right up front, making sure that we're focusing on the needs of the entrepreneur, which is, hey, let's get going now. Like, I don't want to wait a month till I get a price. And then when they become clients, we also have not only the development covered, but we know startups need legal assistance. They need venture capital help. So we have a network of startup lawyers and a network of venture capital people who are experienced in raising seed rounds, who are at the beck and call of all of our clients. So if a client says like, hey, you know, after the product's launch, I'm thinking about raising money, I just don't know what to do, we'll schedule that phone call between them and the venture capitalist or the seed investor. And it's not to do a deal right there. Really, the goal is, hey, you need questions, like let's get those questions answered. So we don't want to just be a development company. What we want to do is be a place where a startup can come and get all of their bases covered.
That's called Launchpeer. That's awesome. So what's next for you? Are you looking for, you know, getting additional funding, or, you know, to scale and hire? What are you looking to?
Yeah. So right now we're looking to scale. I mean, because all of our projects are for startups, you obviously can see that our prices are relatively low. I mean, we want to keep them low. Our hourly rate's low. Our overhead is low. You know, we work out of co-working spaces. We don't have a nice fancy office that our clients are having to pay for. And so in order to scale, we need to get more clients. The first quarter of this year, we had more revenue than all of last year combined. And that just goes to show that our marketing and our model is working. Now the goal is to kind of spread that out. So we're really focusing on just connecting with more entrepreneurs. Everybody who hears about Launchpeer wants to work with Launchpeer. The problem is now just getting the word out. So that way entrepreneurs have, you know, maybe not just 3 options, but 4 options for development, as opposed to, you know, hey, I have to work with a freelancer, I have to find somebody to work for free, or I have to find an agency. I mean, that's fine if you want to choose those other 3, but we want people to know that, hey, there's this 4th option out there called Launchpeer, and we can also help you.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I really appreciate taking your time and sharing the story. Any piece of advice that you have, you know, for veteran entrepreneurs of how to get their feet wet, or how to get into, you know, the next stage of their business?
Yeah, just be prepared. I mean, it's going to be hard. You know, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they jump in and they say like, hey, I'm going to get my first customer, and like it's going to take off from there, right? It's like, you know, it's going to be
you got yours in 2 weeks. So
yeah, and I had I was naive enough to think like, hey, we got our first customer, like we're going to rock and roll now, like no problem. But the first year was a slog. I mean, because you're working out all the kinks that a new business owner has. Like most entrepreneurs, especially veterans, it's probably going to be your first business, maybe second or third. And you don't know everything. Like there's going to be problems that you run into that you have to get over, and just make sure you reach out to people in the community that can help you. I mean, down in Charleston, there are so many people that I could reach out to on a moment's notice to ask for advice. Veterans have a network already that might be hard to navigate or access, but once you do, there's so many resources out there. Just don't put on the face like, hey, everything's going great, I'm incredibly successful. Be honest with yourself and say like, hey, I'm having trouble, I need help, and go ask for it.
Or feeling naive, were there any things that hit you, like huge events or huge things that you were like, wow, I had no idea? Everyone always says legal, but so either legal or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just paying the bills, right? Like you get so caught up in like running the business, and hey, the business is doing okay. There's going to be times when like you have a bad month of sales, or you know, even having a bad couple weeks of sales, like they could really set you back, especially for an early business. So like you might miss a mortgage payment, you might miss a car payment, stuff like that's probably going to happen. I mean, the fact that every entrepreneur can start a business and have $100,000 in the bank and say like, hey, cool, I have a cushion here. Doesn't happen. I mean, we didn't have a cushion. We sold a house, had a few $1,000s in the bank, and I said, look, I'm 28. If I don't do this now, like I'm never going to do it. We have 2 kids already. I'm married. Like if I don't take the chance now to do it, we're going to spend that money on something. We're going to move on, and I'm just going to get locked into, hey, I'm making enough money at my job. Even if I hate it, I can't leave now. So, you know, what entrepreneurs need to know is like, take that chance, you know, like you're not going to regret it. You can always go back to the workforce if it doesn't work out. But, you know, if you don't take that chance and jump in, then, you know, 10 years from now, you could look back and say like, I should have done it.
Yeah, it's great advice, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for talking. And where can people find you on Twitter or otherwise?
Yeah, they can search at Launchpeer. It's LAUNCHPEER. They can go to launchpeer.com and they'll see my face on the bottom right. They could chat with me if they want to. And they can find me on, you know, LinkedIn, Facebook. There's so many social media channels. But yeah, reach out. I mean, I love helping veterans. So if you have a project idea or something, just go to our website and I'll help you get a quote really fast at least.
Yeah, and I highly recommend for entrepreneurs to reach out to Jake if you're looking for that, because he's a great guy and Launchpeer is a great company. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Cool, thanks.